Mr. Weinberg discussed bus and playground expectations and also reviewed the ABCs of Middleborough as part of the school safety procedures. The students are excited to have Gigi back as part of their ST Math program. They are looking forward to the MKG open house on Wednesday, September 29th. Students with the last names ending in A through K will be from 6:30 to 7:15, and students with the last name ending in J through Z will be from 7:15 to 8 p.m. Everyone must wear a mask when they are in the building. For Nichols Middle School, NMS had a Go Gold Spirit Day in support of childhood cancer. Many students and faculty dressed accordingly on Friday, September 17th. The first student council meeting was held on Monday, September 20th, and there were 41 students in attendance. The student council is led by Mr. Finch and Ms. Schobel. The first Nichols Middle School GSA meeting will be held on Monday, September 27th, right after school in the cafeteria with Mrs. Foley. Also, flag football intramurals start on Monday, September 27th, and will take place on Monday and Tuesday afternoons until November 2nd. And just a reminder for NMS families that the late bus runs Monday through Wednesday. For MHS, last Wednesday, September 15th, MHS held their annual fall open house. This event had great attendance, and all families were able to visit the new high school and meet the teachers that their student has this semester. The MHS School Counseling Department hosted the final workshop for the class of 2022 as part of the College Planning Workshop Series on Wednesday, September 22nd. The focus of this workshop was the nuts and bolts of applying to college. If you were not able to attend, the recording is posted on the MET Middleborough YouTube. The members of the National Honor Society are offering a program to all students in all classes, allowing for weekly meetings with a one-on-one tutor. This is a free tutoring opportunity, and please reach out to Mr. Goldman if you are interested. Tomorrow, September 24th, MHS is hosting their Go Gold Day in support of childhood cancer. We are encouraging all students to deck out in gold. The first football game will take place tomorrow, Friday, September 24th at 7 p.m. in the MHS Stadium. The Student Council and Tribe Nation are working together to create the new student section and the new bleachers. The theme for the student section this game is rodeo, so we encourage all students to deck out in cowboy hats, boots, and flannels. On October 2nd, the MHS Student Council is hosting a spin-off to the annual lock-in called Leadership Overload. This event will be from 6 to 10 p.m., where we will participate in fun activities and workshops. And a reminder to all senior families that all senior pictures are due for the yearbook by November 22nd, 2021. Thanks.
Thanks, Natalia. Does anyone have any questions for Natalia? Thank you very much.
Thanks. Thank you.
Next on our agenda, I'll turn it over to the superintendent's report.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the committee, and members of the folks in the audience. Welcome. Some faculty members here also. I have COVID-19 updates, and just sort of simply tonight, we have 26 active cases in the district as of last Friday. We have some students who will clear and some people who will clear, but we have additional that I know of, so that number may go up, and that number will be updated tomorrow by 4 p.m. And could be in the 30s. Certainly, keeping in mind that we do have all of our students and teachers inside the building this year, and we don't have COVID. We don't have the same style of school that we had last year with half of the students in the building and half the students are not in the building. So I think that we need to keep that in mind, that we are going to see numbers that may be increased a little bit. But we go through contact tracing, and Paula Magnasco, our coordinator of nursing, is going to talk about that in a few moments here. So if there's no further questions on that, or if there are no questions on that right away, we'll move to our test and stay program.
Go ahead.
Couple things. You said 26 students.
26 active cases.
Sorry.
Yep.
26 active cases. Does an active case mean they have a positive test, they're sick, they're moderately sick, severely sick, hospitalized, or dead?
Means they have a positive case, ma'am.
So, but I want to understand, because moving forward to make policy, a positive case doesn't necessarily equate to a sick child or, person. So were those persons with positive cases ill with symptoms of anything?
We ask positive cases to remain home in quarantine
So you don't know if they're sick.
if they're positive for COVID.
So that doesn't mean they're sick. So I'm asking, because I asked last time if we could collect more data so that we can base policy on active sick cases, not just on positive cases moving forward, because there is a difference. A positive case is often in somebody that has 0 symptoms or very mild symptoms or a sniffle. So I think that's important to understand. So how many students or staff total in the whole district?
We have 26 active cases, ma'am, and we ask active cases to go stay home and remain home so that we can prevent further spread of COVID-19 within our schools.
That wasn't what I asked. So I was wondering how many students and staff total, because I'm just trying to figure out, like, what percentage of that we have.
We have 26 active cases, ma'am.
No, students and staff, total students and staff in the buildings.
Oh,
Across
in
the
the entire
district.
school system?
Yeah, across
We have
the
over 400 faculty and 3,000 students.
So, okay. All right. I'll have to figure out that math later, but that's great. So are you
It's less than
going,
1%,
Okay.
0.0079%.
so we have less than 1% positivity. Do you have the data on how many of those are vaccinated or not vaccinated?
We do not, ma'am.
Okay, so all those data points are really helpful. I know that Duke University was just doing something regarding, they were doing their testing on campus, both vaccinated and unvaccinated, and it seems like the positivity rate is about the same in both vaccinated and unvaccinated students, about 2% positivity rate. And again, not really, as far as they're saying, mild to no symptoms of students and staff. So I'm just wondering if moving forward, we could collect more of that data.
We collect as much data as we can, given the circumstances, but we are following Mass Department of Public Health and DEACE guidelines on this, and we will continue to. This is not a district per se specific policy. This is a state mandated policy that we're following and that we need to follow. So we can't make individual decisions.
Great. So we have two, last week I brought up that Sandwich Public Schools and now Silver Lake Public Schools have actually asked DESE for more clarification and justifications on these policies that don't actually make a ton of sense to the parents and to the students and to the staff. So I'm just wondering if that's something, because I had asked last time and I had sent it to some of the school committee members, if you've discussed that yet and have decided on an action plan that you plan to take to write a letter and similar so that you can explain some of these things that are arbitrary.
So to be honest, a discussion of a letter is not on tonight's agenda, nor have I heard from anybody about a letter when I set the agenda. So we can put it on another agenda to discuss.
I asked you last meeting, and Mr. Stevens asked me to send it to him. Did I have to ask very specifically to have it put on the agenda? Because I brought it forward last meeting.
I didn't get.
You were here.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I got the email and I read the letter you sent, which was from the Sandwich schools.
Mm-hmm.
The basic premise of the letter was just to ask for clarification on the science behind the decisions. And then Mr. Harley sent me one from it wasn't Silver Lake School District, it was like the elementary.
It was Halifax, but it was that's the Silver Lake District.
Silver Lake.
It was from the district, but it was from the elementary school
Right.
Board of Halifax, I think.
Mhm.
And they said
No,
the same.
I'm reading it. It says Silver Lake Regional School District.
Yeah, if you read the whole letter, it's from the Halifax Elementary School Board.
Oh, they're separate. Okay.
So it's not like the whole district is sending the letter, it's the Elementary School Board of Halifax.
Okay. So
So
they
it's not-
separated out their town from the other
Not to be
towns. Okay.
nitpicky, but I just want to make sure people understand who it's coming from.
Mhm.
Sure.
I was actually considering, I would like, I could certainly take information and we can put together something on the COVID-19.
Sure, we can discuss it.
So I think we could put that on I didn't realize you wanted that on the agenda. I was just asking for information.
Well, no, I thought that that was something that we should do as a school committee, because just like Sandwich points out, that DESE says in their memo that even for students not yet vaccinated, the apparent risk of COVID to children remains small, and these factors continue to reinforce previously instituted COVID-19 measures in school settings are no longer necessary. But then later, they said it's important to keep students safe, so they're going to put masks on them, even though they said that the measures are no longer necessary. So when I see that kind of conflicting information coming, I think that's a good question to ask back to DESE. Like, please clarify, if they're not at risk, why are we taking such extreme measures for only this population, while the rest of the community can do everything they want, and the children, when they leave these doors, are engaged in with all those same children in normal social situations. So, it's all, I don't know if you just step in this door that COVID affects you more or what. So these are kind of arbitrary, and it's very clear. And even Sandwich points that out, that this really seems to be a punitive measure to push people into getting a shot. So that's important, because we don't want to deal with that discrimination. And as October 1st approaches, I'm wondering what the plan is for moving forward with this, the state's plan, because it's pretty much around the corner, to allow vaccinated children to not wear masks and to have this test and stay program that only targets unvaccinated students.
Well, what they have floated out is that we would have to hit 80%. That was the number that was floated out by Department of Elementary and Secondary Ed, the commissioner.
Do you know where that number comes from?
I have no idea, ma'am. That came
It's
from
just
the- that
arbitrary?
came from the Commissioner of Education. That's where it came from.
He has a degree
So-
in healthcare?
Ma'am, can I answer the question?
Okay.
It came from Jeff Riley, the Commissioner of Education in Massachusetts, based on a board vote, but they did not give him authorization for the 80%. That was just a roundabout number that he used. We're not even close to that in Middleborough. Not even close to
So are
it.
you just using that as an escape? Like, we don't have to do it because we don't think we're going to reach it, so we're just going to not go there?
I don't speak for the commissioner.
The State Board of Education hasn't given him the authority to do anything yet, so until that happens, I don't have an answer for you
Okay.
about the 80%.
So that number is kind of an arbitrary number to your understanding because Jeff Riley came up with it?
Yes.
Okay, fabulous. Thank you. I'm glad that I get to hear that. Sorry.
I have a question.
Go ahead.
Do you know if anybody has gotten back to Sandwich or Halifax?
Those answers I don't know, and I'm not sure how much this letter will do, but I feel like if there's a collective effort from school districts across the state that say, we want more information. Actually, I think, sorry, let me just read what Sandwich wrote, because
Ma'am,
it
we're
is.
not going to get into the letter because
Yeah.
we're going to
No,
discuss
I'm
it
just
at
going to
next
let you know, it says, just as a student is expected to show their work in math and footnotes when
Ma'am.
writing a paper in history, it's important for government to do the same.
Ma'am, we're not going to get into the letter because I said it's not on tonight's agenda. We will discuss it at the next meeting.
Well, I think it's a good point that they should show their justification, their data, what is driving that decision, because it's arbitrary. And just like we try to teach our students, show your work, they should be showing us where this decision process is coming from. So if school committees stop just saying, well, we don't have a choice, our hands are tied, but start asking critical questions of the state that's telling them to do this, I think that maybe we can start moving and making some progress.
Greg, go ahead.
I'm not sure if this is appropriate to bring up. I read the letters you gave me. I'm sorry I didn't get back to you sooner. I think we can do a subcommittee, maybe, on that. That way, we don't have to take up the school committee, and then the subcommittee can come up with a proposal for the school committee to act on.
So, no,
No? Okay.
because there's nothing on tonight's agenda about letters. So I can't establish a subcommittee about letters.
No, it's already established.
The COVID.
The COVID.
Yeah, we can go with the COVID, that's fine, but I
That's what
thought
I'm
it was
saying.
about, I apologize, I thought it was about a letter.
No, so my recommendation to the committee is I'd be willing to have a subcommittee meeting.
And again, I can send it to the committee to do it, that's fine, but we can't have this discussion because it's not on the agenda to do.
Okay.
Okay,
But I thought I was able to ask questions about anything COVID-related during this time when it was about COVID-related things.
You are, but if we're having a conversation, it's about what the superintendent's report from COVID related, not about letters that we haven't put on the agenda to have a conversation about.
Sounds really nitpicky. Okay.
But that's what open meetings law is about. Because if
Okay.
the committee is going to make some.
I formally
Ma'am,
request
I'm
that it be
talking.
put on the agenda.
Ma'am, I'm talking.
Okay.
If open meeting law requires us to put on the agenda what the school committee is going to deliberate and talk about. So,
Okay.
thank you.
Then I'm formally requesting it be put on the agenda that we talk about COVID-specific actions that the school committee can take to ask for further clarification on why these policies that don't make sense are being targeted unfairly at our students that are affecting their education on a daily basis. Great.
And then I said they'd be on the next agenda.
Fabulous. All right, I think that's all for now.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Any other questions before we move on? Superintendent, go right ahead.
Mr. Chair, on the next item on my report is a health update and regarding the Test and Stay program with Mrs. Paula Magnasco, who's our coordinator of school nurses here in the Middleborough Public Schools. We welcome her this evening. Thank you, Paula, for coming, and take it away.
Thank you for having me, Superintendent Lynch. Again, my name's Paula Magnasco. I'm the coordinator of school nursing with Middleborough Public Schools. And on the agenda is the COVID-19 Test and Stay program from the state. I'm going to present a summary and then a brief overview of the frequently asked questions. The Test and Stay program uses the Binax Now rapid antigen test. The program includes parent and adult student opt-in or opt-out options to participate. The testing is used only when individuals are identified as meeting the Mass Public Health criteria for a close contact exposure with a COVID-19 positive individual while in school. Is there a ton of feedback? Am I? Thank you, Sean. Testing for individuals exposed outside of school is not an option through this program. The features of the Test and Stay program include that families may choose to opt in or opt out of the Test and Stay ahead of the program start date. Another option for families is to opt in. We've found a way to offer that the opt-in or opt-out can be updated the day the individual is identified as a school-level close contact exposure following the state's guidelines. Questions about how this test is performed? On-site COVID-19 tests use a nasal swab. It's not the swab that goes to the anterior nose. It's a moist, larger nasal swab. They're administered daily for 5 to 7 days, and those days are calculated from the date of exposure on the days the individual is in school. Continuing with features of the program, the goal is for all tests to be performed by an on-site team provided by CIC Health. One nurse and one support person are to be provided to Middleborough Public Schools through this state-funded program. All the nurses have been started their training on this, and we do not yet have the state support yet, but we hope to get information on that soon. Once a negative result is received, individuals may remain in school and do not have to quarantine at home per the state guidelines. If an individual enrolled in the Test and Stay program participates in any school activities, be it clubs or sports, on a weekday or a non-school day, the program includes an at-home eMed test. And this test is to be taken at home as directed. When the negative test of the eMed test result is in, the individual is welcome to participate in the planned school event on a non-school day. And the reason we use the term individual is because this applies to any student or staff that's identified as a close contact exposure through the schools. So that could be a coach or a club advisor or another type of staff person in addition to individuals identified as close contacts through this current close contact tracing program. We've received questions about how the eMed test at home works. The eMed test is an at-home kit, and they're used only if an individual has a school-sponsored event over the weekend or on another non-school day. For example, athletic games, school performances, clubs, etc. The individual will receive one eMed test kit to take home on the last day of school prior to the school activity. Individuals are to take the test on the same day as the activity, but prior to arriving at the activity on the non-school day. If the eMed test is negative, the individual shows the negative result to the school staff, be it their coach or advisor, etc., at the school event and is cleared to participate. The individual will follow mask guidelines for school events. If the test is positive, the individual is not approved to attend the school event and is to follow up with their positive test result. eMed tests are being sent to Middleborough Public Schools automatically. One note is that we have not yet received these eMed test kits. We have been informed by the state that these eMed kits will be received within a week to 10 days. I've included a list of the test and stay procedures. It's step 1 through 8 for those that are administering the test. I just included that there as information. I won't go through all the tests, but you can see that it's as simple as a 15-minute test with test results appearing, and then the proper action would be taken. The updates from the Massachusetts Government Department of Education Guidance and Massachusetts DPH, this is their FAQ sheet, which actually came out today while I was attending a virtual Massachusetts Public Health meeting. It included questions such as, are school individuals considered close contacts if they were exposed to a COVID-19 positive individual while outdoors? The answer is no, with the reminder that Massachusetts Department of Public Health has updated its definition of close contact to focus on contact that occurs when indoors. Only exposure time indoors is considered when identifying close contact exposures for students and staff. Continuing with the FAQ sheet, the question was, if individuals are exposed to a COVID-19 positive individual outside of school, can they participate in the test and stay program offered in school? And the answer is no. At this time, the test and stay is approved for in-school close contacts only. The next question is, can other tests be used in the school's test and stay program? And the answer is no, only the approved Binax Now tests, which may be used in school. Only school-provided eMed test at home tests are acceptable on non-school days for school events. Continuing with the fact sheet, the next question is, what are Massachusetts Department of Public Health and the Department of Education specifics on vaccination status? And there's resources included. The answer is, unvaccinated close contacts that are exposed to a COVID-19 positive individual in their households, such as siblings or other non-school setting, are to quarantine at home per the Department of Education protocols for responding to COVID-19 scenarios for this school year 21-22. And I included the link to the document for the protocols which we're required to follow. A reminder from mass.gov and the Department of Education that fully vaccinated close contacts are exempt from quarantine at home protocols and do not need to participate in test and stay. Continuing with the FAQ sheet, the next question is, has DESE DPH changed the definition of a close contact in the recent protocols for responding to COVID-19 scenarios for this school year? The answer is no. The definition of a close contact has not changed from last year's 2021 school year and to aligns with the Massachusetts Department of Public Health guidelines on close contacts. In some cases, the quarantine protocols required for close contacts have changed and are outlined in the protocols for responding to the COVID-19 scenarios 2021-22 document. And if I may summarize, what that means is this year, the 6-foot identification of a close contact exposure indoors is broken into 2 groups, Group A and Group B. Group A would be those inside of 3 feet from the exposure, and Group B would be 3 to 6 feet. Those less than 3 feet from the exposure indoors for 15 minutes, and the criteria includes within 48 hours prior to testing positive without symptoms, or within 48 hours prior to becoming symptomatic. This 0 to 3 feet group is considered a close contact that would be needing to stay at home or use this test and stay protocol. Those from 3 to 3 feet to less than 6 feet, or we can call that group B, are required to also, they're considered close contact exposures for the in-school exposure, but they're asked to just monitor their symptoms closely for 14 days. If they develop symptoms, they're to stay home and seek medical care. So that's the change this year over last year. And forgive me, I did it off the top of my head, so if I got confusing on that, I can answer anybody's questions afterwards. Continuing with the FAQ sheet, the definition of a close contact exemption includes those that are fully vaccinated close contacts that have no symptoms, and individuals who are exposed to COVID-19 positive individuals in the classroom while both individuals were masked are exempt as long as the individuals were spaced at least 3 feet apart. Also, individuals who are masked on buses when windows are open are exempt from testing and quarantine response protocols. Continuing again with the fact sheet, individuals on school bus must be masked according to federal transportation requirements. The next question is, can individuals participating in test and stay ride the bus? The answer is yes. Individuals participating in the test and stay are able to participate in all school setting activities, including riding the bus, following current state guidelines. Again, masks are to be worn on the bus with the windows open. Exemptions from quarantine test and stay include close contacts who have had COVID-19 within the past 90 days. These individuals are exempt from testing and quarantine response protocols as long as the person is recovered and remains without COVID-19 symptoms. Also, individuals who are fully vaccinated are exempt. Remember, a reminder, all close contacts are to be closely monitored for symptoms for 14 days. And that goes back to what I explained, is that the criteria has not changed. It's still individuals that were within 6 feet indoors. But those that were masked and were from 3 to 6 feet don't have to test and stay or close contact quarantine at home, but instead are to self-monitor for symptoms and to stay home if they develop symptoms. Continuing with the questions from the Mass Department of Education's FAQ sheet, can individuals with symptoms participate in test and stay? The answer is no. Symptomatic individuals, as defined on page 3 of the protocols responding to COVID-19 scenarios for this school year 21-22, cannot participate in test and stay. If COVID-19 symptoms arise while an individual is participating in the test and stay program, they're required to stay home and isolate until symptoms resolve. Symptom resolution is defined as having improvement in symptoms and having been fever-free for at least 24 hours without the use of fever-reducing medications. Continuing with the questions, the next frequently asked question was, what kinds of tests are acceptable for the different quarantine protocols and clearance? And the answer is the COVID test required to return to school after COVID-19 illness can be a PCR or a rapid antigen test, or any lab-monitored rapid antigen test, which includes tests administered at home with an online observation, as long as the results are automatically and electronically reported to public health. There is the disclaimer that at-home tests that are not lab monitored do not meet the current Massachusetts state guidelines for testing. I thank you, and I welcome questions or however we want to proceed according to the meeting.
Questions first, and then I'll go to the audience. So I'm going to ask the committee to ask their questions first, and then I'm going to go to the audience. Go ahead, Teresa.
So I understand that this is an attempt to keep kids in school, and I fully support that. But these guidelines are changing daily, and I think we can all agree that vaccinated are also spreading this virus. And I did speak to the DESE COVID responder this afternoon. I gave her a quick call and I had some questions, and she was very forthcoming, and she recognized that these guidelines are changing, and she said this could change any day. But I would like to say, let's be that district that goes above and beyond. Let's just come up with a policy that requires all staff and students, regardless of their vaccination status, to be tested. And if they have symptoms, they've been exposed, they need to be tested. I don't need to ask you if you're vaccinated or not. So it doesn't have to be within the test and stay parameter. We can have our own policy outside of that test and stay. And that's what I would like to ask the committee to do.
Okay. Any questions for Paula from him? Richard, go ahead.
Thank you very much for the presentation. I was wondering, is the opt-in, opt-out good for the whole year? I know you had the stipulation that that can be changed on the day of, and I'm assuming that means that we would call parents and say, hey, we are looking to administer this test. Is this still okay? Is that what you're
Well,
saying?
actually, if I were to explain to you the scenario of how we notify families of a close contact exposure, when we implement the test and stay, the plan would be that those that have opted in, we'd notify those families that we were going to implement that what they've approved of. The other families would be notified that you have the option to either dismiss your student because of the state's guidelines that they met the criteria as a close contact exposure. But if you'd like to change your mind and opt into the test and stay, we have the ability to do so. So it's just thinking ahead that, people may have one decision and may change their mind when it affects their family. That said, I do have paper forms and I can share I'm sorry, is the feedback bad? Can you hear me okay?
No, it's okay. I just have
Okay.
terrible hearing.
I'm usually pretty loud, so we have the paper options and we can share the link. So we're just trying to be as family-friendly as possible, and we would like to be able to consider those that may not have options to access an online link. We'll have paper opt-in, opt-out. We would allow a verbal opt-in, opt-out, but as nurses, we document everything we do because we follow strict protocols. So we would make sure that if a family changed their mind that day, we'd find some way to document that it was the parent's decision and no one else's.
Got it. And Mr. Chair, if it's okay,
Yeah.
I just had a follow-up. Students that do test positive as part of the test and stay program, will those be added to our school dashboard, and are those reported back to the state for positive cases?
Just to clarify, what you're asking me is if students test positive and then they're part of this exposure test and stay program or not, the answer, if I'm understanding you correctly, is every positive case is reported. I'm
Got
the
it.
district's reporter to the DESE data gathering, and I make sure every case is reported accordingly.
Excellent.
So it does not change anything there.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
My
Any
pleasure.
questions?
Sure.
Sir, go right ahead. You had a question.
I have a couple of questions. I noticed that these are stated as state guidelines. So are they just guidelines or are they the rules you have to follow?
Through you, Paula, but my understanding is that if we adopt this program, and we have adopted this program, then we have to follow the guidelines provided by the
Well,
state.
they're not guidelines then. You have to follow them.
I guess there would be requirements.
If I may answer from a nursing perspective, there are protocols that as nurses, we do have to follow if we,
So I think the term guidelines is misleading. You're required to do it. If my understanding with your answer is correct, you're required to do this. It's not a guideline, since you opted in.
Correct.
I think that's
We signed up for the test and stay program.
So you're required to do these. They're not guidelines.
That's my understanding, yes, sir.
So that's a yes? You're required to do these?
That is my understanding.
Yes.
Is that a yes?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Now, you had something about parents being able to opt out. What happens if they want to opt out?
the answer is they'd be opted out. And
What
they
does that
would.
mean? Does
Is
that
this
mean they
question
can't-
for me or for the panel? I don't want to over
Well, I don't care who it is.
If a family, from my understanding, it chose to opt out, we would revert back to the other protocol, which is a close contact exposure test and stay at home, which requires individuals, according to the Massachusetts Public Health regulations, that those that are identified as exposures are to quarantine at home until
So
they're cleared.
If they opt out, they can't attend school?
That's the policy that's in place now. The test and stay program is an attempt to try to help these children and staff stay in school as much as possible. But if someone chooses to opt out of this program, the other regulations are in place, and yes.
No, to state it differently, if they opt out, that students are not able to attend school, it's not I don't know what wording you use, it's not a guideline, it's not they have to, they don't, the option to opt out means their kids can't go to school. Is that correct?
That is what the current
I
policy.
don't care who is promulgating it. That's the fact. If they opt out, they can't attend school?
I'm
Mr.
going to
Chair.
answer according to my protocols, sir, with every respect. There is protocols that have been in place since we started COVID in schools. And so those that opt out of the test and stay would have to, I would have to, and my nursing team and all the educators would have to follow the protocols that are in place
You're
now.
following requirements wherever they come from. You could call them protocols, but you're following the rules you adopted. So if they quote unquote opt out, they cannot attend school. Is that
Mr.
correct?
Chair. I just wanted to make sure, I don't know if you guys are on the same page, you might be, but if you opt out of the test and stay program, you don't just have to go home. It's only if you're a close contact that you would then have to quarantine at home.
Yes,
The
this whole,
children can continue to attend school, but if they're part of a close contact and they've opted out.
To further clarify, the students who are being tested are close contacts.
Right.
So
So-
they either go with the test and stay, or they do go home and stay home and quarantine at home. I think that's the answer to your question.
Thank
They
you.
cannot come to school.
Okay.
Mr. Chair?
Yeah.
Just as a follow-up, regarding the testing last year, they had to test within a certain amount of days. So is that still in effect, Ms. Magnasco?
yes,
So
everything is exactly the
They would
same as
follow
last
the
year.
5 to 7 days after exposure.
Yes.
And if they got a negative test, they could then return to school.
On day 8. If they choose not to test, they can return after 10 days of close quarantining at home on day 11 after the exposure.
Okay.
And just so that everybody understands, none of this applies to any student that is not identified as a close contact exposure, any student or staff. These things are only for managing those students at risk because of a known exposure to a COVID positive person that meets the strict criteria.
Well, just a comment, it's not really a question. The details of the close contact with 3 feet, 6 feet is pretty confusing, and it seems like it could be pretty subjective. I guess that's a question. The protocols for deciding who's a close contact, you had details there. Who determines who was there present deciding how many feet they were away and all that other stuff? Who determines that? The teacher?
We utilize our administrators to do that, to work with the
Well,
school
your
nurses.
administrators are not there when the close contact occurs. Who determines the distance and the contact criteria when they say it happens? Who reports that? Because you've
The
adopted these
faculty of the
rules.
school, sir, the adults in the school, the faculty of the school, in consultation with the school nurse.
Well, wouldn't it have to be someone who's observing the level of interaction between students, who knows whether?
It is, if I may.
How in the world could you keep a log of that retrospectively if a student, how do you determine? Do you have teachers knowing who's got COVID and then knowing who's 3 feet, 6 feet away?
Mr.
That
Chair?
seems like a crazy system.
If I may, it's a
Okay.
collaborative effort that includes strict seating charts that have been implemented since this all began. So yes, we do monitor where the kids sit.
You're not monitoring when they're in the halls or in the buses. You can't possibly monitor that unless someone's, it seems very arbitrary to me.
Mr. Chair, it is within 15 minutes though, so a classroom setting, you would be sitting and you'd be charted. If you're walking through the halls, you're not with someone for 15
So
minutes.
you're not keeping track of contacts that might have happened in the hall that would fall underneath these rules which you've adopted, but you're doing it arbitrarily, I'm saying, based on a teacher's report who's in the classroom and reports to you how close that student was in the classroom with the seating distance.
That is what we're required to do, yes.
Well, you're required to do it because you've adopted these rules from the state, is that correct?
We cannot opt out of these rules from the state, sir.
No, you've opted into these
No,
rules.
that's separate from test and
No.
stay, and I'm sorry if I wasn't clear on that, but the close contact quarantine has been part of returning to school since we returned to school.
The
That
close-
has not changed.
Close contact has nothing to do with test and stay, other than it's a way to test students who are in close contact. Test and stay is a separate than close contact.
I don't understand that answer at all. Because you're going by how close they were to determine if they were exposed to do the test and stay. That answer makes no sense to me.
There's resources in this guide that you could read if helpful, but clearly explains the guidelines that we have to follow since
I'm
we've been in
asking
school.
you about how it actually works in the real world, and you're talking about guidelines you've gotten from on high, and I'm talking about kids in school, and you're saying that you decide, oh, they were 3 feet, they were 6 feet, and it's in the classroom, it's not in the hallways, and you're commenting about the buses. Buses don't generally ride, particularly this time of year, with windows open. There are a lot of ambiguities, and
Sir, just to be clear, the buses have the windows open.
no, they don't.
Okay. Do you have another question, sir?
So are you stating for a fact that all the school buses in the Middleborough school system have all their windows open all the time?
They are directed to. And if that's not the case, then someone should report that, and we can look into the matter.
It's very overwhelming, and I think it's really absurd. And I guess I don't have any more questions.
Thank you.
Hi, just a couple questions. For the students who are potentially exempt from test and stay, either because of vaccination status or they're in the group B, are they still notified of being a close contact? So Therese made a great point that vaccinated individuals can still spread. So if we know that there is the potential, if this is all adopted as is, that a vaccinated individual is not eligible potentially to be part of the test and stay program because of resources and costs and all of that, I just want to ensure that those students or staff would still be notified that they are a close contact so that they could determine if they wish to take additional safety measures themselves. Or if one of the students or staff was in that 3 to 6 foot buffer, just clarifying that you would still be notified of the close contact so you can make your own decisions for your safety.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
I can only speak from where I sit and see where I work and all of that, but that can happen and does happen. And if where I am, a vaccinated individual would have been notified and could actually opt in to test, but are not required to test.
Okay.
So there's no requirement, but they would be notified that they were a close contact. So regardless of their vaccination status, they would be notified. I would hope that that's part of this test and stay program. And if it wasn't made clear, Ms. Magnesco, maybe we could just make sure we're clear on that.
Yeah, I will admit that I've been confused by some of the statements you've made, but what you just said right now is clear.
Okay.
So if you are vaccinated, you can be exempted from test and stay. And if you're asymptomatic, you could remain in school. But if you wished to participate in test and stay, just to double check, that is acceptable and covered under the policy.
Sure.
Does that same apply if you're in the 3 to 6 foot buffer, or are 3 to 6 feet not notified of, are they not considered close contacts anymore?
They are notified that they're 3 to 6 feet and that their requirement is to just please closely monitor symptoms. And if they develop symptoms, please seek care. They do not have to test in order to come to school.
And they do not have to quarantine if you
Nope.
don't want to test
They're
either.
welcome in school, and
Okay,
that was a
but you
great.
can be notified just to be aware.
Yes, and that was a great improvement last year, because all last year we were having to quarantine all students up to 6 feet. So that was great that they made the delineation of only those within 3 feet.
And then those, I believe on one of the slides, it said that if you're in that group B and you develop symptoms, you are asked to stay home, but then if your symptoms go away, it's covered more under the normal school, hey, you had a fever, you had symptoms, and as long as you're 24 hours free, you can return. You're not expected, if you're in the group B, to have a negative, and if you're in group B and you had fever and the sniffles, you can return to school without a negative COVID test?
We would seek medical clearance, so that would be the nurse would be involved. And
So
that's
it would
part
be
of the-
dependent upon the symptoms and
Yes,
the conditions.
that's
Okay,
part of the no illness at school, that we would work with each family to clear.
perfect.
Sometimes there's an alternate diagnosis.
Yep. Okay, thank you for clarifying. I appreciate that.
My pleasure.
Rich, you had a question?
Mr. Chair, I just wanted to acknowledge, I think what Ms. Farley said makes a lot of sense, and I would love it if that could be referred to the policy subcommittee to implement in some way.
So I can refer it to the policy subcommittee. That's not a problem.
Okay.
You have a question?
Oh, yes, I wanted to ask the nurse, if, when they had that frequently, whatever thing you attended that you got all this information from today, so I know the CDC guidance is changing constantly, so, but the current understanding I had was that they had come out and said that vaccinated individuals are at risk for infection and at risk for transmitting, and that they suggested that close contacts be tested. So did DESE explain why they are exempting vaccinated students from testing? Because the CDC guidelines or guidance is different, and I just didn't know if DESE just did whatever they wanted based on their fancy.
As nurses who were on the meeting today, we did ask that question, and we're awaiting clarification.
Okay, because it does make more sense that any close contact, regardless of vaccination status, should be tested. If these are the rules we're going to apply, it seems like anybody who is in there meeting their their criteria for close contact should be tested regardless of vaccine status, because we already recognize that the vaccine's failing. So that would be great.
I know.
And also, sorry, I just lost my thought. It would reduce that discrimination that we've been discussing and going over. I know that a friend of mine in a neighboring district, her daughter had an exposure. She had to stay out, but there was another student that was vaccinated and she could come to school. So once her daughter returned to school, she faced a lot of problems in her school. So the field hockey team did not want to be near her. They kept talking about staying away from her. They were worried. Now, everything they followed was per DPH and per, this is the day she's clear to return. They followed everything as she was supposed to. And she still faced backlash from her teammates, and she faced backlash from her peers, one who pushed her to go get the shot because clearly now they know her status, and it is private health information that other children shouldn't be privy to, because now they're in turn thinking that they need to pressure her into doing something. Peer pressure is not okay. Bullying is not okay. Segregating a student is not okay. And this policy that allows exemptions or exceptions for certain people based on their medical status not only marginalizes those students, it further marginalizes people of different religious beliefs, cultural beliefs, and based on their age. So, I think we need to really address that.
I would like to just address respectfully and all-inclusively, as a school nurse with many years of experience at all levels, the terms segregation and discrimination don't fit into a nurse's assessment and protocols. The experiences your friend's child had are completely respected. But having had typhoid fever in my school in a different district, having managed students with mumps, we do immediately go to vaccination status and call those families that have chosen to not vaccinate and make sure they're protected at home. So we come from a scope of protecting those families. Never should any of those things happen, but as a nurse, I don't discriminate and I don't segregate. I follow protocols and I follow what we call in lay terms flow charts, which is if this, then. So please.
So I do understand. I wasn't suggesting that you were discriminating. I'm suggesting that the policy discriminates because
Right.
it outs everybody's medical status. It does. You are privy as the nurse to that person or individual's medical status, and the state has very strict criteria. If you have an unvaccinated student and they have an exposure to something, that they get contacted and they are withheld, but only you get to know that.
Right.
So this policy outs other people, and that is actually what happened to my friend's daughter, and she's really feeling the brunt of that, and I don't want to see that happen to our students. So I think we could get ahead of that by eliminating this whole thing, because it seems like DESE is just doing whatever they want willy-nilly without you know, I don't like these guidelines. I would like to do what we used to do. If you have a sick child, they stay home. If your child is well, they go to school. We base it based on that individual symptoms. It's worked for decades. But if we're going to have to do something, there should not be the exempted based on their status, based on their vaccination status, as well as, this is another question, sorry, just
No
to
worries.
move on. While I'm happy to see that we are recognizing that people who have it have recovered, have good antibodies, and that they are exempted, why did they say, I know you don't have the answer, but today in your meeting, why 90 days? That's another arbitrary number that they have picked.
Many things are set way above my head, but yes, that's the 90 days that's been in place for as long as we've been managing this in the schools. And it is an interesting number, but it is
Okay,
the number that's
because-
medically accepted.
Because so far there has been some good evidence in longitudinal studies that are showing long-term robust antibody responses in the people that are recovered. And I feel like if you're going to implement that those recovered people are exempt, you could probably actually do blood work and you could have them bring in their titers and you could say, nope, they're still exempt. You know, we're looking already at the longitudinal study looked at the 8-month mark and they at 8 months still had really good studies, and it's ongoing. Obviously, we need more time, but the original SARS outbreak, those people are still demonstrating antibodies 17 years later, and they work fairly well against this new outbreak. So they didn't give you answers on why. We're just getting arbitrary kind of information, which is another reason maybe we should push back against DESE with a letter.
I've asked for clarification on that as well as T-cell immunity too.
Oh, beautiful. Thank you so much. I appreciate it, Mrs. Magnesco.
Thank you.
Other questions?
So I just have two questions. I have a question for you guys and a question for the nurse. So when you opt out of the test and stay in school, what kind of accommodations do you make for the kids that have to quarantine at home for so many days? Like, do they get a packet of schoolwork that they can complete? Are they now, docked those absentees to go against what they're allotted in a school year to be absent from school? How does that work?
If they're home from school and they're quarantining, those are excused absences.
Okay. What do you do about schoolwork and stuff like that?
I can't hear you, ma'am. Could you
What do you
speak
do
up?
about schoolwork?
Well, they would try to get schoolwork to them as projects that they have and as much as we possibly can, but it obviously does not replicate a day in school, certainly.
So are you guys going to think about how you're going to handle that moving forward? Because not everybody's going to opt into this policy.
I understand that. We'll work with families, we'll work with students just like we did last year, and we'll continue to do this year, outside of obviously not having a remote option.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And as far as the test that the DESE says that you guys have to use to test these kids in school, to keep them in school, why did they choose that test? Does anybody know? It's not FDA approved. And do we know what that swab is moistened with when they're shoving that up kids' noses every single day? Which is a cancer-causing substance. So I just don't understand why this is the test that they're choosing to use that's only authorized under the EUA authorization.
Are there any tests that are approved other than EUA?
I don't know.
I don't,
Why are
I don't think there are.
are we still under an emergency?
That's a PCR test is going to be done. This is an antigen test. But those are questions that are above me.
But it's good to ask. I
But
mean,
these
you
are
guys
also, this
implementing-
program is being put in place to keep kids in school if we can,
I get it.
and
but
not
there's-
automatically send them home quarantining.
I understand what you're saying,
Okay.
but there's also other consequences that you guys, as the school committee and the nurses, should think to be asking. I mean, you're putting our kids through this. You should be knowledgeable about why you're doing the things that you're doing.
We
It's
are
not
asking
just about-
questions, but we also are under DPH and MASTES. This program is under their guidelines, and it's a program that came from them.
It must be tough to operate under someone's thumb all the time. You guys have an obligation to ask these questions. I'm sorry, you can't hide behind that.
Questions are asked constantly, ma'am,
They're
but
not, because
the
you
answers
can't
come
answer
from on
them.
high that this is the way it is.
That is not an acceptable answer. I'm sorry, these are our kids. Once again, we need to point that out at these school committee meetings.
We are answerable to the Board of Education. We're answerable to the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education, their policies, their protocols. We are answerable to them. We are a local school system
You're
under their
answerable
authority.
to us.
We are under their
You are
authority.
answerable to us, the parents. We are number one.
I would like to put on the agenda for the next meeting, whether if a parent opts out of this testing procedure, that the school system will proactively set up a policy in place, not if the parent contacts them, that you will have a policy in place to figure out how to get the schoolwork to them. And it's not, it doesn't fly that you're always talking about it's coming from on high. And that if the parent says something, why don't you set a policy that if a parent opts out of this system and the kid has to stay home at school, that you will have a policy in place proactively to tell the teachers what to do in that case, how to get the schoolwork to the kids, how to communicate with the parents, keep in touch with the parents, so the kid doesn't lose anything by the parents opting out of this. I would like that put on the next agenda. Formally. Put it on the next agenda formally.
We have a policy for when students are absent, how they achieve their work.
What is it?
It's that they have to reach out
Why?
because they're out of school. It's treated as an absence.
You caused them to be out of school. You should proactively have a policy. It's not like we can't do anything but obey these rules because you adopted these rules. They're not guidelines. You're hiding behind this higher authority. We ask questions, we don't get answers. You as a school committee could proactively say, if a parent opts out of this program, we are going to make sure that student does not fall short, and this is how we're going to do it. You don't have to go to the state, you don't have to go anywhere, but you are responsible, not anybody else.
Thank you.
And you don't need the parent to reach out to you. You need to set a policy in place. So how do I formally ask that to go on next meeting's agenda?
I set the agenda.
How do I ask for that to go on the next meeting's agenda?
I'll note that you asked.
No, what do you mean I note that I asked? Does that mean you're not going to put it on the agenda?
I don't know. I have to review what our policy is.
That
So-
doesn't mean, that's gobbledygook.
Unfortunately,
You've already told us the policy. You told us the parents have to reach out. They're excused absence. It's up to the parents to reach out to the school.
As a
You're
parent and a nurse, can I just step in for a second? Because I think you might like what I'm saying, is that we have policies for when kids are out, when they're absent, and how they get their schoolwork.
What are the policies?
But let me finish the sentence. If we create a different one for COVID absences, it will indicate to those teachers why those students are out. So it's part of it, because they'd be under a different, I'm just saying, when we treat all the absences the same, no one knows why the students are out. So it's part of that sensitivity to families that we follow.
You're hiding behind HIPAA laws when you're forcing those parents to have their kids out of school. You're doing a shuffle here. You're setting this policy. You say it comes from the state. And if parents have a choice, if they want to opt out, that's their right. Why don't you have a policy in place? And you don't have to tell the teachers why, that if a student, how many days do they have to be out? 14 days? I don't know. If a student has some situation where they're going to be out of school for 14 days, why don't you address the issue as a school committee and say, these are our policies, how it may take extra effort on the teacher's part? I don't think it should come from the parents. I think you should have a proactive policy to help those kids.
Sir, I'm just making that clarification. If we were to identify,
You're not identifying, you're saying they're absent. What is your policy for helping kids who are going to be absent? Maybe you don't have any.
every school has one in their handbook, and I believe every principal
Right.
does have one for every absence, from
What
strep.
is it? But
I'm
I'm
done.
sorry, but she's not answering the question. What is the policy?
Excuse me, can I, teacher, can I just address this?
please, go ahead,
I
Laura.
think I might be able to help clarify. I'm pretty sure Superintendent could also want to speak for the elementary school. I don't want to speak for the middle school, but I do want to speak for the high school because this has affected teachers. And I'm sorry, I just can't sit here and listen anymore about the work. The policy in place for students who are absent, regardless of the reason, is that the work gets to the students. Many of us use Google Classroom. We email the students, we email the parents if they're absent more than 2 days to see if there's anything they need, if there's anything that we can get to them, to remind them that there is homework, there is classwork on Google Classroom. That's what we're doing at the high school. We have done that regardless before COVID. We continue to do that with COVID. We care about these kids. We want them in our classroom. We want to do whatever we possibly can if they are out of the classroom. The elementary school teachers make sure they have packets ready if kids are absent, and they find a way to get those packets to those kids. The same thing happens in the middle school that we attempt to do with Google Classroom. And I may be wrong with that. Mr. Brandon can speak to that. But I think it needs to be said, we are doing everything we can to help your kids, to make sure that they are learning when they are not in school. And so is the school committee. This is a very difficult time. And we are doing everything we can, and we need to come together as a community. All right? I love my job. I love this community. I love this school. I love your kids. Everyone in this building does, and no one more than this man. And we're doing everything we can to make sure that these kids get the best education they can under very difficult circumstances, especially when they're absent. And I just feel like I needed to say that. I just feel like I needed to make sure that you understand that.
Thank you.
Thank you, Laura.
Thank you, Laurie. It's important to note for the community that when students are absent, there is an entire protocol that is put into place. For every student that we have had to notify the fact that I personally call every single one of these families. I speak to every parent. We go over exactly what they need to do together, and we work through exactly what is needed. We have teachers that are going over above and beyond what they need to be doing to get our students. And I can imagine it's not only at this building, it's in every single building in the district that is getting the students exactly what they need to get through the days that they are out of school. And then when they come back, we are assessing where they are needed and what is needed for them in that moment to be able to actually get caught back up with something that they may not be able to do. It may not be every single homework assignment they need to do. It may not be every single activity, but it's going to be doing an assessment and a triage of exactly what these students need to do. And the fact that to this community, you need to understand that there isn't a person in this building or in this entire district that is not working tirelessly to make sure every single student in this building and in this district is safe. And to have a different narrative is unfair and it's not right. We are working to get it done. The students, we have a policy in place, and that each and every day between myself and the head nurse and the school nurse, that we work collaboratively to make sure the fact that every single student is accounted for, every student has to go out into quarantine, that we have a system in place. And it's done with every single student that we have had to put out of school. And it is not fun to have to make those calls, or when we get a phone call from a family to give us the information, that our immediate reactions and protocols are put into place to support them. So please, I need people to know the fact that we're actually doing all the pieces in place that we would have been doing for any student who's out for a medical, for any single issue. We do it for everybody. So thank you.
Good evening. I'd like to echo what Mr. Brannigan and Mrs. Davis has also said. I've had plenty of students over the years that are out for extended absences for various reasons. We make sure that we get the work to the family, to the students. Even our teachers will deliver packets right to the houses. They've done it numerous times. Even during COVID, they're delivering meals, they're delivering resources. Everyone has gone above and beyond and worked tirelessly, like Mr. Brannigan said, to support our students. Our teachers have been extremely patient and kind and will waive whatever it is they're missing, and we'll work with them to support all our students so they are successful in school. We want our students to succeed, and that is our job. And our number one priority is that they're safe and they're supportive. And we are all working together as a community. None of us want this. None of us like this. And honestly, it's a lot more work on the schools than you might ever imagine. Our nurses are loaded every day, and the admin is stepping up and helping out our nurses to get it done. So on our teachers, our secretaries, and everybody. So please know that we all have the best interest of our students in mind. We may disagree or agree to disagree on protocols and things, but we're doing our job as we are asked to do it, whether you like it or not. But we are here for your students, your children, our students. And please know that not one of us we're all working extremely hard. And we are all doing our best to make it work for your child. We're putting your children first before our own, for the most part, in a lot of instances. And I think people forget that as administrators, as teachers, a lot of times we don't put ourselves first, we put your children first. So please know that we care about the community and our students and the health and well-being of everybody that we work with. So thank you.
Just a quick follow-up. Nothing I said should have been interpreted as attacking teachers or their dedication. I was asking the school committee about policy and protocols. The school committee did not state what is already in place for kids who have absences. None of you folks did. The teachers took it as a personal attack, it seems to me, when I was not attacking the teachers. I was asking you if there was a protocol. I didn't get a straight answer.
I told you there was a protocol.
Well, I asked you what it was, and you didn't answer me. So the teachers think I'm attacking them, which I'm not.
Other questions?
Yeah, Mr. Chair. This is a question from Ms. Magnasco. Thanks again for the presentation and for helping us with answers. So at work for me, if I'm out for COVID reasons, I have to be seen at occupational health before I return. And I was just wondering, is there a similar type of protocol where if a student is out on quarantine, or rather the specific part I was referencing is if when symptoms go away, then they can come back if they've tested negative. Do you guys see them first before they come back, or do you talk to them, or do we kind of just trust that symptoms have gone away and they can come back?
I'm going to paraphrase, I think, what you're presenting, because you're kind of presenting a couple different things. Staff is managed differently for work absences. There's definite protocols for those to, just like a pregnancy or an operation, to prove clearance, just like you do at work.
Yep.
For students, we have illness and no illness at school policies. So we do have a protocol, or whatever you want to call it. It is a nursing assessment to determine if a student is dismissed due to question of COVID, and those students will need to prove they're either COVID negative or have an alternate diagnosis. It's all in the reopening plan, very specifically laid out. So students are cleared when they return. When they're home as a close contact for a school level close contact tracing, because it was we as public health nurses under mass and local DPH guidelines put them out for that close contact following the regulations, we can clear them as long as they're asymptomatic. If a student were to develop symptoms, they'd need clearance from a medical provider, or Jackie Johnson, our local public health nurse, is excellent at providing clearance. Because we are not diagnostic medical, we can do a nursing diagnosis, which is a safety diagnosis, but we cannot medically clear a student. So to your question, if a student was symptomatic or tested positive, they will either require a medical return, or our local public health nurse has been exceptional with clearing students that need to do so.
Excellent. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
I thought I read in the policy that if they stayed home for their 10-day period, they didn't need a negative test to return.
Yes, and that's
Okay, I just thought I heard you say they needed a negative test to return.
symptomatic kids that were sick.
Symptomatic kids have to have, I thought that even a symptomatic child, if there's a time frame that once they are past that time frame and they're fever-free and reduction in symptoms, they can return without a negative test. I mean, in healthcare, we're not doing that. So I'm just telling you the algorithm that we see in healthcare is not requiring a negative test to be considered
Some of the
recovered.
wording changed today, so forgive me. If you
Okay,
could-
I hadn't, what the last I saw, because I wanted to make sure I understood how long my child needed to stay home and didn't need a negative test. And I thought there was not a negative test. So, all right, we'll just.
So, well, and if I can be helpful, because our local Department of Public Health is extraordinary and does work hand in hand with me every day. If I had a question and I wanted to feel the safest and that family did not have a medical diagnosis or did not have medical clearance, Nurse Jackie does step in and she does assess and she will provide clearance for students that may not have it otherwise. Because we don't want to say some kids clear without, some kids clear with it,
But as long as they meet the criteria of the 10-day window, they don't need a negative test, is what I read. Because I, as a parent, can assess that and determine that they're well enough to go back to school and follow the rules that
Yep.
they're fever-free for 24 hours and their symptoms is reduced. And it's 10 days and no negative test is what I think was, I don't know, C.
Yeah,
I don't know.
a lot of times we don't even want them out 10 days if it was
I
something.
know, I know.
So,
I understood they could come back sooner with a
Yes.
negative test on day 7, I think.
Yes.
Okay.
But
I just thought you
with
were
alternate
saying-
diagnosis, like if they do have an ear infection and they were out, they could come back a lot sooner. So again, it gets very
Oh, that's great to
complicated, so,
know. Okay, so if they got strep throat
yes.
and they can, okay, great. And I
Not
just-
as a close contact, but as a dismissal for
Sure,
illness. So
for-
that's why
yeah,
there's just so much in our heads, if we could lean
It is
together.
hard, it is very hard to keep everything straight. And I just wanted to say to this gentleman in the yellow, I understood what you were saying and I felt the same way you did. I know the teachers seemed a little upset, but I think they actually helped clarify because I wasn't getting an answer just the same way he wasn't. But when the teachers spoke and they said that they are proactively doing what he was asking to be done, that helped me understand more. So it was helpful that you guys got up to explain that because he wasn't getting that answer from the school committee, maybe because they are not the teachers, so they're not knowing what actions the teachers are taking, but it was very helpful when the teachers got up to explain that they're doing that. And I agree, I don't think he was trying to attack teachers that they weren't doing their job. I think the frustration as a parent is that our children are missing out. It's not just about work, it's about how they're learning inside of a classroom. So when the well child is home, not getting that instruction, which is critical, it's not just about them completing the work, which is great, they don't fall behind, or they have to self-teach themselves, but they're missing out on critical instruction, and that's frustration for the parents, and I'm sure it's frustration for the teachers, because it is a whole lot more work what we're asking the schools to do to operate in this fashion. I'll tell you from a healthcare perspective, my job didn't shift a ton. I still treat my patients the same way. Do I have to put on more PPE? Is it more of a pain? But it's not what teachers have done. It's not what the schools have done. You guys are doing so much more work. So we recognize that as parents, but we also feel frustration in that our children and well children are missing out on instruction time in the classroom. But thank you, sorry.
So Paula, thank you very much. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
So what I'll do is I'll send it over to the policy subcommittee, and we'll go from there. Okay?
Thank you.
And the policy subcommittee meets Monday at 4?
Yep.
Thank you. Good, Brian.
Mr. Chair, thank you. I'll continue with my report. Tonight, we have the final 2 programs in a series of programs that were featured in our last previous two meetings with regard to summer programs that were featured this summer in all of our schools. The first guest we have tonight is Laurie Davis. She's a teacher at the high school. She and a colleague have developed a program called the College Boot Camp, which is a comprehensive program for students who are entering seniors to work on their college essay and do a number of things during the summer. So we welcome you, Mrs. Davis. Thank you for coming, and take it away.
I have to put my teacher voice on.
A little bit closer to the mic, if you don't mind,
Little
Lauren.
bit
Thank you.
closer. Is that better?
That's much better.
Okay. So this, the College Boot Camp is a program we've been running for about 5 years in the summer. It came to fruition over the idea of thinking that instead of focusing on the college essay and English classes where there might be students who would not be pursuing college, that we would offer a program during the summer to get students a leg up on the college process before they actually started their senior year. They could come into their senior year with their college application completed. So the program, as it is designed, is Monday through Thursday. They work with myself, and this year I was lucky enough to have Ms. Connors work with me as well. They work with myself and they worked with Ms. Connors Monday through Thursday. We had 12 to 2 sessions for those students who worked at night. And those students who worked during the day for the summer camp programs, we had a 5 to 7 session. And for 2 hours, we taught them how to write their essay. We revised those essays within 24-hour time period for them to get feedback. So then the next day we would have something to talk with them about what they could do to improve it. We met with each student individually. That's the beauty of the program, is that they get one-on-one time with us. So we meet with students about what their topics should be. We meet with students with revisions. We meet with students to talk about how they can improve their essays. And then on Fridays, they meet with guidance from 12 to 3 or 5 to 8. And guidance helps them through the process of linking their common application to Naviance, how to request teacher recommendations through Naviance, and then they upload their essays, which will be finished by the time, hopefully, Friday rolls around. This year, we only had 8 students who did not finish their college essays by Friday, so those essays and those students we've been continuing to meet with beyond their summer programming, so we still meet with them during the school day. I think I only have 4 more students left that need to finish their essays. And then they link their essays up to their college applications that are completed, and they're done. The goal is to get their essays finished early so that they can put their applications in early so that they can get early feedback on colleges by December, because FAFSA forms are now done in October. And by January, they can actually make a decision as to, based on financial aid, where they would like to go. So that's really my focus for them, is to make sure that everything is completely laid out for them. The importance of this program cannot be stressed enough. We've been doing it for 5 years, and every year the program grows. The last 2 years, as a result of COVID, we've been doing it on an online programming basis. So last summer, I met with 75 students, 12 to 2, 5 to 7. We did online, we did virtual, we did breakout rooms, we worked with them online. This year, because of I just finished a degree program at Harvard, and Ms. Connor was also doing her classes for summer. We weren't able to make it here in time. So while we were finishing up our classes, we were teaching these students for all intents and purposes. So finishing our classes and getting here would have been a little bit more difficult for us. So we would finish our classes and then meet with them online. We were able to give the kids feedback. The kids did very well with the online. They were used to online learning by then. So they had done very well. But our hope is to bring it back to an in-person experience, just to give them more of that face-to-face time with us. But yeah, that's the program. And it happens every summer. And it's usually the first two weeks in August, so that it kind of doesn't bump up against any other programming for the summer.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Davis. And just before the school committee asks questions, I just want you to clarify. You mentioned Naviance a couple of times. Could you just explain what that is?
Sure. So Naviance, I'm probably going to screw this up, so I apologize to guidance ahead of time. But Naviance is a programming system which allows students to, it's like a one-stop shop for them in the college application process. They're able to link up their colleges so that all of the colleges get their common application at the same time. Their teachers' recommendations are linked through that programming, which also sends it out to all of the colleges. And their transcripts, I believe, are also, and their SAT scores and their AP scores are also sent out through that programming. So it's sort of like a one-stop shop programming that allows them to send everything out all at once to their schools.
So thanks very much for your report. It's a great program. I have children participated, my own children. Any questions from the board?
Good, Rich.
Sure, thank you. I wish something like this existed in my high school when I was getting ready to go to college. It sounds awesome. I was curious this may be impossible, but is there a way to track the kind of acceptance rate of the kids that go through this program?
They
with
all
you?
get accepted.
Oh, well, there you go, 100%. Sounds pretty
It's
good.
it's 100%
She's
acceptance
guaranteeing
rate.
100%.
Yeah, I guarantee 100%. Yeah, no, they're all accepted to the colleges that they apply to. We take great care to make sure that we speak to them about the kind of colleges that they should look for, the kind of colleges that they may want to look at. I used to have a lot of conversation, and Mr. Lynch can attest to this. When his daughter, Maggie, was attempting to go to college, I sent her to St. Anselm's, even though I know you wanted Providence. I sent her to St. Anselm's to a school that she hadn't thought about, and she ended up graduating from there.
She did.
Yes, she did very well there.
She did. And thanks to you, she graduated as the top English student there too. So
It's my girl.
Other questions?
Sorry, just one more. I know you said it, but I didn't jot it down quickly enough. How many kids went through the program this past summer?
So this past summer was 62. We average anywhere between 75 and 80. I think this year, I think a couple of things kind of tapered off the numbers this year. I think the fact that it was online and some of the kids might have been burned out was probably an issue. And I think that there were a lot of things going on this summer that prevented kids from taking it. Ms. Connor and I had a conversation about possibly offering a mini kind of session on a Saturday with students, but we're trying to find a time when that might be able to work out. Right now, we're kind of struggling to kind of figure stuff out. Because again, we're both, I'm in a new degree program and she's finishing up at Harvard, so.
Cool. Well, thank you for running this.
Thank you. I just wanted to echo what Mr. Oakley said. I can still remember sitting with my parents, having them proofread my essay and the stress that created. So just to thank you to the high school for offering something like this, and for you, I mean, to dedicate your summers to doing this. I just think it's spectacular, and just thank you in advance. I'll send my kids, I promise. So I think it's just wonderful, and the help that you're giving them is, and the help that you're giving the parents too, so that, because this is all different from what I remember. So knowing that when I get to that stage that I don't have to figure it out all by myself, just thank you in advance. So to the school, thank you.
You're welcome. Trust me, it's all different from when I did it too. It's not easier.
Mr. Brannigan.
I just want to just make sure that it's echoed that we're really unique in terms of the program that Lori and Meg Connor and our entire school counseling team put together. The fact that our students are able to do their college essay, to be able to upload it into Naviance between what the school counselors do on the last day, where they come in and they take their students and be able to do their entire Common App as well. So there are two major lifts that are done. And I just, between the school counseling team and then of course with Lori and the amount of hours that are put in, it is such an invaluable program. And so just really when you see the benefit of our students who have done it and then going through these 2 months of school, knowing early action deadlines are coming, there's a little bit more calm because they have these two huge lifts done. So just the feedback we've gotten over time, and just a thank you to Lori for putting that together.
Thank you.
thank you.
Mr. Oakley, get right in.
There's just a question in the chat. I think I know what it means. It just says, can someone repeat what the intramurals are at Nichols Middle School again? I couldn't hear her. The audio had an echo. I think she must be referring to maybe just the program that you offered. And if that's the case, Miss Lee Bowens, if you wanted to just reply in chat, I think she was speaking about the college boot camp for writing essays. And
It sounded like she asked a question about intramurals at the middle school.
Yeah.
yeah,
That's nothing to do with the boot camp. So
Yeah.
perhaps when Mrs.
Yeah, nobody
Attenda-
wants me teaching sports to their children, like honestly, like There's a limit to what I can do with kids, and sports is not it.
But perhaps when Mrs. Latenda gets up to do her report, she could speak to the middle school.
Sure.
Because Laurie Davis, we don't expect her to know
Yeah,
middle school.
no, I don't.
sports.
I don't run a bath, so like I'm not going to be. Yeah, you don't want to see. You don't want to see me play sports.
So Laurie, I would say I agree with Brian, having had 2 children who went through boot camp. It was fantastic. And I think in a lot of ways, it starts off their senior year with a little less pressure because they have something that's important taken out of the way and just makes that year a little more easier as far as knowing where you're going to apply, how the Navient system works, and the essay is done. So it isn't kids staying up late at night, working on their homework, and then focusing on an essay. It's they have it done, it's over, and they can move on. So I know it was very
There's
helpful.
enough stress associated with the
Absolutely.
college application process. And then when we can assist them and take care of that in the summer, prior to the senior year, it's great. So
Plus, it's a good way for them to start their senior year. I mean, they spend so much time the end of junior year thinking, "Oh, I'm going to be a senior," and then they come to me, and the reality is, "Oh my God, I'm a senior. Oh my, oh my God, what is that? Oh my God!" And so it becomes a very sobering moment for them to realize that, "Oh, yep, you made it. So let's get to it." And they do feel very relieved when they leave. Mr. Stevens, I had your daughter this year, feel very relieved at the end of that. And we don't just assist them with the common application essay, we also work with them when it comes to supplemental essays too. So if they're applying to schools that have additional essays, we don't just say, okay, we did the 650-word essay, we're done with you now, you can go away. We also help them with those supplemental essays that usually ask the hard-hitting questions, why do you want to go here? And then kids go, I don't know. So we help them figure that out as well. So.
Thank you very much, Ms.
Yeah.
Adams. We appreciate it.
Jeff, Mr. Stevens.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, I
Greg.
do want to say something that Bren really did appreciate it. She had so much structure and support, and I think that when she was thinking about colleges, she really had a great idea where she wanted to go because of the school. Not only the boot camp, I think last year there were some workshops where she learned how to pick her top schools, and we did visits this summer, and it was very effective because she knew exactly what she was looking at. So I just want to say thank you to the school system for providing all that.
Yeah, the school counselors do a very good job of setting up their junior year to start thinking about where they might want to go and doing their visits ahead of time, so that by the time they come to us in the summer, they have a very good idea of where they would like to go. And it makes it easier to fill out those applications and, more importantly, to finish out their essays as well. So.
Thank you. If there are no further questions, thank you very much, Laurie. Appreciate it.
No problem.
Thank you,
Thanks,
Mr.
guys.
Stevens.
Have a good rest of your night.
Thank you, you too. And next, I'd invite Mrs. Heidi Latender, Mr. Scott Redpath to the mic to discuss the middle school program for credit recovery that occurred this summer. Welcome.
Oh, there it is. Thank you, school committee chair and school committee members, Mr. Lynch. Thank you for having us tonight. I do have to echo what everyone else has said about Mrs. Davis and the program, the college boot camp, having twin boys last year graduating from college and all of our crazy schedules. It was fabulous to have that essay done. Just saying, it's nice to copy, paste, and upload. So it went very well. So tonight we are going to talk about a couple of programs we had at Nichols Middle School. As an admin team and talking together with teachers last spring, right, I think it was around the time that we all came back, April 5th, we realized that, well, we realized all year, but it started to rear its ugly head a little bit towards the end of the year, that there were a lot of students struggling. And we knew students were struggling for various reasons with different supports at home or lack of supports, or middle school students taking care of other students, other family members in their house while doing virtual learning. And so we know that every family had a lot of different things going on. And then sometimes that impacted our students' motivation and engagement and ability to get their work done that they needed to get done in order to pass. So when the ESSER 2 grant came along, thank you to Mr. Lynch and Sarah Hickey, I asked if we could run an after-school, support program, almost like a credit recovery. We don't do credit like the high school does in order to graduate, but it was an opportunity to give our students the additional support a couple of days a week after school for about 10 weeks so that they can recover and get some of their work done and just gain the standards and understanding and knowledge of skills that they may have been missing. So we wanted to provide support to our struggling learners, give the opportunity to learn in a smaller setting, and just clarify any skills and concepts and revisit for what they may have lacked, whether at home, learning at home virtually, or just the transition back and forth in and out of school, or because of those students who miss school because of COVID situations or close contacts, or just being sick and, having a positive COVID result. So there are a lot of different factors that, led us to believe that, we really want to step it up and do a little bit more for our students and try to help them do better in school and build their confidence and give them the time to learn in a different setting with the support of our staff. So we're very fortunate to have many students attend and many teachers willing to step up and join us after school to help these students. So really the goal was to assist students with missed work, understanding and application of the content knowledge, and to build on their subject matter and to enhance their understanding of the grade level standards in each of the 4 content areas, which is ELA, math, science, or social studies. And we wanted them to avoid failing and not have to attend the summer school program in more than 1 content areas. Unfortunately, some students may have been failing anywhere from 1 to 4 content areas, and the goal was to help them pass all or a couple, anything to help them not attend summer school, but also really to gain the knowledge and understand that they needed to move on to the next grade. So our participants, these were willing participation. We contacted our parents based on teacher recommendations, and 24 6th grade students did attend, along with 6 7th grade students and 15 8th grade students attended. And then we provided learning and structure under the content areas of English, language arts, math, science, and social studies. And the number of students for science and social studies was about equal. We had more students needing support in English, language arts, and math. And then our students were able to earn points based on their grade, based on the attendance and their work completion. So the goal was to add the points to their final term, the term 3 of any work that they've missed, so we could get them caught up. And then they were based on academic needs. Students were identified based on, oh wait, we're moving on here. Yeah, go back, sorry. We have 2 programs. So really, the goal was to support students so that they could pass any content areas, not attend summer school, or not attend summer school for all 4 content areas and maybe 1 or 2, which we were successful in doing that. And I actually meant to look up those numbers to give you, but I don't have those numbers in front of me. But I do want to thank our teachers who stepped up to help support that program. I'd like to thank the central office administrative team for allowing us to provide this opportunity for our students. And I'd like to thank Stacy Card, who stepped up as one of our paraprofessionals at the time to help organize and run and facilitate some of this in the after-school program. She's done an exemplary job helping out getting this organized and for our students and for our teachers to know what students were coming to them. And she's just a go-getter and did a great job. And our teachers were phenomenal in helping out and helping our students recover. So it was a great opportunity. We're hoping that we could do something like that again this year, but have an extra support homework club throughout the school year. So we're not doing that at the end of the school year, trying to get students caught up, but also just give them that opportunity throughout the year so that they're already successful and learning the standards they need to learn. And we still know that there are a lot of different circumstances in every household. So we want to do our best job we can to support all our students to be successful. So that's really it for our 10, 12 weeks spring program we kind of put together in a couple of weeks last year, and we were happy to be able to do that. And then, as we all have always done at Nichols Middle School, we've had a summer school program. And Mr. Redpath is our science teacher and our science department head at Nichols Middle School, and he is infamous for running this program, so I'll let him take it away and share all the wonderful things he's done this year.
I hope it's not infamous, but. So this was my 17th year running the summer school program at Nichols. Having the previous program was very beneficial because it did help to reduce the numbers of students that entered our program, and our program nearly doubled in numbers. For the past 16 years, we averaged anywhere from 20 to 30 kids, and this year we had 51 kids enrolled in the summer school program. So it was quite a jump from last year and would have been significantly higher had we not had the credit recovery program. So the program, we returned to a 5-week format, and we returned to 2 class sessions. With the number of students that were affected in more than one class, we felt it was necessary to offer more than one class for a student to be able to make up. So we had 2 sessions, one that ran from 8 to 10, and the other that ran from 10 to noon. A bright addition to this program this year was the breakfast and lunch that was served this year, that I do believe made a significant difference for a lot of these students coming to school not having had anything to eat for breakfast, and some maybe not having anything to eat the night before. So it was really beneficial to have them have that ability to get some food, and it helped with their overall attitude and their ability. So that was great. We offered classes in ELA, science, math, and social studies, which we don't always offer all 4, but we definitely need it this year, and I would recommend that we continue with offering all 4. As you can see, the breakdown, we had 6 6th graders, 11 7th graders, and 34 8th graders this year. The benefits of our program, the small class size. We endeavor to keep the class sizes under 12, and for that reason, we were able to have 2 ELA teachers and 2 math teachers to keep those class sizes that small. I think one class we ended up with 13, but the most, I think the others were 9 and maybe 10. So that reduced class size gave the opportunity for that teacher to really work one-on-one with these students, and that'll be reflected in a minute with some of the feedback we received. We marked attendance every day, and the purpose of the program was mostly remediation and progression of skills, and then the demonstration and application of standards. So we leave it up to the teacher to determine, once they see the students in front of them, what the curriculum will be that will best suit those students sitting right in front of them. Instead of a predetermined curriculum, the teachers have the ability to adapt to what's there, which is fantastic. And most of the time, it's remediation, basic skills. For example, math. A lot of these students struggle with something as basic as multiplication tables. And it's not that they can't do the other work, but if you're trying to solve an equation, but you have to think too long on a simple multiplication problem, you lose track of the instruction while you're trying to solve that, and everybody's going on. So having the smaller class sizes and doing this remediation allowed that to happen. At the end of the program, we gave the students an exit questionnaire, and these were some of the comments that they made. 88% of them stated that it was better than they thought it was, which I was really impressed with. That's 88% of the kids. My anxiety wasn't as bad as I thought, and I made a friend. Less people, less anxiety. And there was other comments about anxiety this year, and I think we can all agree this past year was one where anxiety levels were certainly very high. My teachers were great, and for once I loved math, not to mention the short days and no homework. We do everything right there in the program, so there's no stress bringing work home. Not all the kids have the same supports at home. The class is 2 hours long, so there's plenty of time to get instruction and practice, and then whatever would normally be homework done right there. So that took a lot of stress away from our students. I thought it was better because I'm in person and I'm understanding math a little bit more now, and obviously being in person. She's so sweet. Oh my gosh, I love her. This is the first time in years I enjoy math, but understand. She went over it multiple times. She didn't rush through topics. These are different students, by the way, and different teachers they're referring to. She helped us on with the answers we got wrong. She helped me understand everything fully and went over every step and made sure we all understood. She was just really nice. Slower and more help. She explained things about what we're doing. She went back and explained things until I understood. These are their words. And I think that shows how effective and helpful this program was.
And I'd like to say that some of the students got to get to know some other teachers at different grade levels. And I know at one particular situation that a student really found a liking for a teacher and has extreme anxiety. And the transition into school this year and being on that team, this child has done extremely well. So there's lots of impacts that you don't realize unless you know the students individually, and a lot of positives. And I love that these were exactly their quotes and their words on the survey, which I thought was a great idea that Mr. Redpath have instituted, is to get feedback from our students of, how is the program working for them? And there were other questions as well that he added on there. So what can we do better, and how can we do better for our students? So it went really well. And then some opportunities to improve. We're always looking at ways we can do things better. And we want to determine equivalent number of hours of tutoring instead of summer school. So what happens historically, and Mr. Redpath probably could speak to it better, that not until May or beginning of June does a parent know that a child might have to attend summer school. And they have already planned these vacations or expensive trips and they're not around. So then we have to look at, well, if the child is out for a week and misses a week of instruction, are they willing to get tutoring or to make up those hours in order to pass? And that actually goes back to the promotion guidelines at Nichols Middle School. Like, they all kind of tie together. And then in the past, they have done a program called Play-Doh or some type of online platform. And we have to determine what number of units are required to pass if we continue to use that as a resource to substitute for summer school. Because our goal is really, if it's 4 or 5 weeks and they do them 4 hours a day, 4 times a week, we're trying to make up a lot of hours and a lot of work for a child, and we really want them to earn and own the learning that they're getting over the summer. So we have some things we need to look at and review and see what we can do to make it better. And if you want to add, Mr. Redpath, please do.
Yeah, the percentage of Play-Doh and the equivalent number of tutoring hours, again, addresses those issues for students that the parent can't attend because of other things. Maybe the student's out sick, or the parent does not want to send the student to summer school. And so we're trying to offer options for them. If they prefer to have a one-on-one tutor, what do we tell them they need to have for a number of hours with that tutor that would make up for the summer school program? And the same with the Play-Doh program, which I know the high school used extensively. It's a self-contained program. The student could do it fully remotely, but what number of units or what percentage of the program do we set up to say, okay, if they do this much, then that's equivalent to attending the summer school program? So that's where we're looking at reviewing our promotion guidelines and reviewing these kinds of questions to make our program more effective and have more options for parents.
Well, thank you both very much for coming. I know the school committee might have some questions for you.
Questions? Mr. Oakley, go ahead.
Sure. Thanks again for running the program. It sounds like it makes a real difference, which is awesome. And the question I had, and you listed the number of students that had attended, I believe I saw, but I'm sure there are some students that probably can't attend due to schedules or transportation, et cetera. But I'm curious, how often does it happen when, I think you mentioned that teachers typically reach out to parents and say, hey, they could probably benefit from this program. How often does it happen where they don't attend after being given that warning?
Are you speaking about the first program or the summer school program?
Sorry, yeah. I guess if that particular piece about reaching out to the parents is in reference to the first part, then yes, that part.
So the first program, fortunately, the students are already in school, so they stay after school, and we have late buses, and we coordinated those days with the late buses, so transportation wasn't an issue. There might have been other factors. I don't know what the number was. I could probably look back and work with my assistant principals, because we got feedback from teachers of students they were afraid might be failing, because we didn't have end of the term numbers at this point. We were just doing projected possibilities. And then our guidance team, along with our assistant principals, would sit down individually with these students and be like, okay, this is what your grade point average is, or this is what your grade is in this class. What can we do to get you to be on track and pass this class? And so we did a lot of that legwork, and then from then determined what students needed to attend the after-school program to get them caught up, which then directly impacted what numbers of students would attend the summer program. So the after-school program was new this year, just to support our students. And then I don't have the number of that we offered to and how many, I have how many attended, but I don't have the actual number we reached out to.
Well, there was a group that was reached out to directly, but
Yep.
it was actually also offered to any student that wanted
Yes.
to come. Nobody was restricted, so anybody could come. So that would be two different.
That's true. Yeah, because we did have students who came and just needed to get caught up on work. They just wanted to come because that was that type of student who just wanted to come and get things done and feel better or bump their grade up a little more. So it was open to anyone, but we did first target students who needed that additional support. And then we went from there, which then kind of led to the summer program numbers.
Sure.
Not sure if I answered that question.
Yeah, and don't feel the need to go look into that. I was just curious of general trends, if for the most part, people that are families that are asked tend to show up.
I would say majority, yes. And there were different factors, whether it's activities or sports or daycare or whatever the needs were at home might have impacted that decision. But I would say a good percentage, I would say anywhere from 70 to 85% did attend or chose to attend.
Great. Okay. Thank you.
And both of these programs were paid for through COVID relief and through ESSER relief, whether it was directly through Plymouth County, from the federal government, or through the State Department of Elementary and Secondary Ed that came from the federal government. And also the lunch and breakfast in all of our summer programs was available free of charge. And that was a federal program that allowed us to do that. That's been in place since the closure.
I can state that was actually very important to several of the families who had called, normally would contact me about their concerns about the tuition that we normally charge for summer school. And it was great to be able to say, oh, there's no charge for the program this year. So don't let that be a determining factor.
And I would like to say thank you to Rebecca Bagnell and to Laura, who works in our kitchen, who helped organize even this. We even had snacks in the after-school program that we held in May and June. So thank you to them, and thank you for organizing that. So we could feed our students and hopefully provide a motivation to come join us and get the extra help. But I think it was a well-run program. Scott Redpath did a fabulous job. He took care of all the minutia and logistics to make it happen and worked with the teachers. And, once again, we're fortunate to have a great team of teachers who step up and help out either the after-school program or during the summer.
In the end, it's all about getting these students back on track.
That's
And
the
last
most
year,
important
more
part.
kids were knocked off the track. There's no doubt about it.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Mr. Chair, sorry, I just wanted to ask, obviously, we're very grateful that this was free, that the summer program was free this year. What is the cost during a normal year?
So depending on our setup, with the two-session option, traditionally for students that were not on the free or reduced price lunch, they paid the full tuition, which was $150 for 2 sessions, or $100 for 1 session and $150 for 2 sessions. If they were on free lunch, there was no cost to the program. And if they were on reduced, I believe it was half of that amount, if I remember correctly. The amounts have changed over the years. We've tried to keep pace with the tuition that is offered, that is charged in other districts. So every few years, I take a poll of other districts to see where we are at, to make sure that we're reasonable. Although I can say that the tuition has never covered the costs of the program. That was never the intent. It was more to provide a stake in it to encourage the parents to make sure the kids got there on time, make sure the kids got there on time. We've also floated the idea of having the tuition reimbursed at the end of the session for those that successfully pass it. So that's something that we're looking at examining as we go to look at updating our program.
And I'd also like to say, after listening to what the high school did, and Mr. Brannigan team shared a couple weeks ago. I like that whole idea of adding that physical activity and mindfulness and that social well-being piece. I would love to have a counselor on board during the summer to support students in a different way, if that's even possible. But I just thought, it's nice to have different opportunities and exposures for our students during the summer.
And it would be the district's intention through ESHER 3 to try to fund most, if not all, of these summer programs again for next year, courtesy of the federal government.
Excellent.
Mr.
Yeah.
Chair.
It's called addressing learning loss. So,
Okay, Teresa.
Just to the point where you talked about the stake, having the stake where you pay the fee, did you find it was any different this summer? It sounds like it was very successful where there was no fee involved. And so I'm just curious if you felt like there was any more hesitancy, or maybe kids didn't show up as often if they weren't putting a fee into it.
I don't believe in the past that it ever actually prevented anyone from attending, but I can speak that this year, I probably had more calls with concern about how to pay for the tuition than ever before. It used to be, when I first started 17 years ago, they were charged what they were charged, and they gave a check, they paid it up front, and that was it. There was no kind of payment plan or anything like that. In the past several years, as economics have gotten tough, we've worked with parents on a sort of a case-by-case basis, and some have paid, a little bit each week until the end of the program. So we try to accommodate them as best we can
So
to make
I
it possible.
feel like I'm hearing you say not having to pay was actually a bigger help this summer.
Oh, absolutely,
Right,
sure.
so, okay, I just wanted to be clear because you stated, that
Well,
having to
again,
pay
in the past, in the
right,
past, there was nobody who had called and
Right.
wanted to know about tuition, and I told them it's this much. I don't recall anybody saying, oh, we can't do that. But I did have a number of people this year extremely relieved that they did not have to come up with any tuition money for the program.
And I think another question we did get frequently was about transportation.
Mm.
Because it's summer and parents are working, they might have been able to get a child to the program but not pick them up. So I think that might have prohibited a couple of students to not be able to attend. But overall, we had a great success rate, and attendance was very high for our students attending the summer
Great.
program.
thank you.
If there are no further questions, thank you very much for both coming here this
Thank you.
evening,
Thank you.
describing the programs at Nichols.
Thank you. Thank you for having us.
Have a good evening.
Thank you. And we'll move on. Sarah Hickey, our Director of Business and Finance, is going to take the last two items here. Just want to introduce sort of the concept here. The first concept is substitute rates. As you know, it's been very difficult to get substitute teachers in our district and in any district. And I think that we need to try to make attempts to make our district more competitive in the market that's out there for substitutes. And that's part of this discussion. So Sarah, take it away.
Thank you, Superintendent Lynch and school committee members. Normally, I come to you in December and we talk about the rates that we pay substitutes as we discuss the increase in minimum wage that will start in January. So this is unusual that I'm coming to you at this point in time. I'm just waiting for Sean.
Touch the mute button, Sarah, on your microphone.
This. Sorry, everyone. I was instructed to do that by a very competent individual.
Should I start over again, or were you able to hear me? Can you hear me now?
Go ahead, you can hear you.
Okay, thank you. So I am going to start over. Thank you, Superintendent Lynch, for having me, and thank you, school committee members. And what I had said just a minute ago was that usually you hear from me in December when we're talking about the minimum wage increase that'll be in January, and in December we try to bring all of our substitute our substitutes in line. And I'm coming to you now because we're having issues actually finding substitutes, staffing the buildings on a regular basis. What we're having to do is what are called teacher covers, where the if we don't have a substitute for the day, a teacher will cover on their prep period.
Hold on. Sean, would you like me to exchange microphones with her? Shut that off, please. Apologize for the technical delay.
Thank you. So we have been having difficulty finding people interested in coming to be substitutes. And we do have to have somebody in the classroom with the students every day. And so teachers have been on their prep periods, we call it teacher cover. Teachers have been on their prep periods covering classes for other teachers that are out. So what Superintendent Lynch and I have is two different things that we want to talk about. The first one is the daily substitute rate for teachers. And we're proposing a 10% increase to the hourly rate and daily rate for a substitute. So we have substitutes that are broken up into 4 categories. We have substitutes without a 4-year degree, substitutes with a 4-year degree, certified teachers with a valid license. We have certified retired Middleborough Public School teachers with valid teaching licenses. So what we would be suggesting is a 10% increase to all of the different rates for those. Now this, fortuitously enough, within the past 24 hours, the group of school business managers that I belong to from all over the South Shore and South Coast put out a survey of how much do you pay. This is a conversation that's happening everywhere. How much are you paying substitutes? And we're not at the bottom of the barrel for what we pay our substitutes. We're also not at the top. We're right in the middle of the group of people that the different schools that have responded. And this increase doesn't bump us right up to the top. It still puts us in the middle, but it will certainly make us more competitive.
So Sarah, just to be clear, there's money currently in the substitute budget that would be able to handle this increase?
Yes.
Okay.
This increase, we pay, when we pay a teacher to cover a class, we pay the teacher, if you have to have 4 teachers over the course of a day covering, you pay considerably more than you would for a substitute. And so even though this is an increase, it would end up being a savings in the long run if we could have a substitute teacher in.
Questions for Sarah?
Yes, Mr. Chair. I think my concern is if you maybe you could go back to that slide. Those without a degree, those with a degree, it feels like they're really close together, those numbers, like 50 cents more if you have a 4-year degree. I don't know. It seems a little bit off to me. I feel like they're a little too close together.
Are you talking about what we currently pay?
Yeah, Sean, I don't know if you can go back to the slide. No, all right.
It's up behind.
It's still up behind you, Ms. Farley.
Oh, okay. I can't really read it.
Doesn't
but
really help.
Yeah, I think it said 1470,
So
1425,
right-
and you wanted to go to 1475 or something without a degree. Or 1375. Yeah, that just feels really close together to me. You know, I don't know. I don't know if anyone else feels that way, but
I mean, I guess,
I'm not getting.
Mr. Chair, through you, I guess the question really is, what is the standard practice for the difference between those 2 degrees? And Ms. Hickey, do you feel like that difference is in line with what other districts do between a 4-year degree and?
Right.
Yeah.
This is in alignment with what other districts do.
Okay.
Okay.
So if, let's see, I'm trying to pick one out here off of my list. In Hanover, they pay, I'm sorry, in Carver. Let me talk about Carver because they touch Middleborough. The teachers without certificate, that are non-certified that have a 2-year degree get $70 a day. The certified that with a 4-year degree get $80 a day, and then their certified teachers get $90 a day. So we're a little bit better than that with what we're paying. But again, as I said, we're kind of in the middle of the pack right now. So I look at this as if somebody who lives in the Carver or Middleborough area was trying to decide, do I want to go to Middleborough High School for the day or Carver Middle High School, it's more to come here. So yes, they are 50 cents apart, but that's pretty much how they have been all along, and that's pretty standard.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions? Seeing none, the chair would entertain a motion to approve the substitute request. Do I have that motion?
So moved.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Discussion? Sir, go right ahead. I need you to go to the microphone, though.
You may be, is this working?
Yep.
Yeah.
You may be going to cover it, but you haven't talked about the substitute nurse rates.
That's the next piece.
Okay, sorry.
Any further questions? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It's unanimous. Thank you, Sarah.
So the second thing that I put on this slide was the substitute nurse rates. This conversation actually began last fall, a conversation between myself and Paula Magnasco. Given the circumstances of health and healthcare in the world these days, it's extremely difficult to find substitute nurses to come in and do coverage. And a substitute nurse is, what we ask them to do is different than a substitute teacher in that they are administering medication. They have to come in with a high degree of competence. I'm not saying that our substitute teachers aren't competent, but they're not administering 8 medications every hour. So Paula Magnasco, at my request, put together a survey of different rates that nurses were paid on in the area. And we are currentently paying our substitute nurses $17.89 an hour, which does put us, I'm going to call it, at the bottom of the barrel for nurses in this area. And so what we are asking to do is to increase the hourly rate for a substitute nurse up to $35 an hour, which is what we pay nurses contractually when they do work for us outside of the school day.
And again, same question.
Yes. and-
Sarah, within the budget, you have the money to take care of that.
Yes, we do.
Any questions for Sarah? Go ahead.
I was just curious, as I was looking at the chart that we put together of the different towns and what they pay, I was just curious how that Plymouth line works out, because they seem to have the highest per hour of any of the other districts, but they have one of the lowest per day. I was wondering what that means. $50 an hour, $130 per school day. Does that just mean that they have different length school days or something like that?
It could be, and it could be a typo.
Okay. Fair enough.
Other questions? Hold on one second. Chair will entertain a motion to approve the request.
So moved.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Discussion? Sir, go ahead.
Did you do any comparable studies like you did with the substitute rates?
Yes.
About what the nursing rates are in different towns nearby?
Yes.
What are they?
Should I just read through the list quickly?
Sure, that's fine.
Sure.
I'm going to start at the bottom because that's where you find us, Middleborough. Carver pays their nurses $15.71 an hour. Middleborough, $17.86 an hour. Bridgewater Raynham, $17.86 an hour. Freetown Lakeville, $21.43 an hour. Taunton, $22.22 per hour. Silver Lake Regional is $25 per hour. Wareham, $25 per hour. Berkeley, $30.75 an hour. Old Rochester Regional, $33.33 per hour. The Reeds Collaborative pays $35 an hour. Hanover, also $35 an hour. New Bedford, $35.55. Dimon Regional Voc Tech in Fall River pays $40.59 an hour. Bristol Plymouth, $41 an hour, and Plymouth, $50 an hour. And then we also have other per diem rates. These are for just other local facilities that nurses could work at. Alpha Care Home Health Agency pays $32.50 an hour. Global Pharmatech pays $35.50 an hour. Next Step Healthcare, $37 an hour. Heaven Sent Home Care and Nurse Staffing is $38 an hour. For Women Health Services is $40 an hour, and Favorite Healthcare Staffing is $50 an hour. So if you were a nurse living in Middleborough or a town that touched Middleborough, you would have a lot of better options than $17.86 an hour.
Other questions? Seeing none and hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? It's unanimous.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And I'm now going to shift gears to talking about the ESSER 3 grant. The ESSER 3 grant I have talked about previously. There are certain requirements for the district with the ESSER 3 grant. One of the things, and you all saw in your email recently, we had to do a survey. We're required to survey stakeholders. So you received in your email the Middleborough Public Schools ESSER 3 funding feedback survey. So this survey was distributed to stakeholders on Thursday, September 16th. The survey actually closed last night because I needed time to go through the results. We had 681 responses to the survey, and on the survey, if you recall from when you took the survey, I hope you all did, the respondents were asked for their top 3 priorities, choosing from allowable spending categories. So the federal government set aside money. They give the money to the Department of Education in Massachusetts. The DESE, or the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education, is considered what's called a pass-through agency. So the federal government gives the money to DESE. DESE does 2 things. They administer the grant and work with the school districts with the money, but they also go through all of the language from the federal government about how the money can be used. And so then they pass on to us, the school district, what are the allowable uses of the money. And so what I put in the survey was a summary of the different allowable uses. So to choose from, I had asked the respondents to the survey to choose what do they feel was the most important, then the second most important, and the third most important to Middleborough Public Schools of all of the allowable spending categories. So I just want to go through the allowable spending categories. We're allowed to purchase educational technology. We're allowed to provide supplies and services that enable remote learning. We're allowed to provide additional support to address the needs of students in special populations and with diverse learning needs, particularly those disproportionately impacted, students from low-income families, students of color, English learners, children with disabilities, children experiencing homelessness, and children and youth in foster care and migratory students. We're allowed to spend on planning for and coordinating during long-term closures, for example, meals to eligible students and online learning. We're also allowed to provide mental health services and supports, to spend money on conducting informal testing to measure students' knowledge and skills, to spend money on assessing and addressing learning loss, on planning and implementing activities related to summer learning and supplemental after-school programs, on training and professional development for district staff, on repairing and improving school facilities to reduce risk of virus transmission and exposure to environmental health hazards and to support student health needs. we're allowed to spend money on purchasing services and supplies to sanitize district facilities, personal protective equipment, or PPE. We're allowed to spend money on funding to assess and upgrade indoor air quality in school facilities and other activities necessary to maintain district operations and services. So this survey went out to all of the families that we have in our database for students, as well as our Family Resource Center has a list of contacts of people that, and programs that serve.
Community partners.
Yeah, thank you. Community partners that serve Middleborough. So that's where all of the surveys went out. The responses to the surveys, the most important, the one that people said was most important to them was providing additional supports to address the needs of students in special populations and with diverse learning needs. I'm not going to read that whole thing again. And then the second most and third most important in the survey were both the providing mental health services and supports. So then what I did, because that was unexpected that there would be a tie for second and third place, then what I did is I took all of the results, the number of people that selected the different categories all 3 times, and I looked at what was the next most popular of importance. And so combining the results, I'm sorry, I just went backwards. Combining the results for all allowable spending categories, the next 2 most important categories were tied, and they were funding to assess and upgrade indoor air quality in school facilities and repairing and improving school facilities to reduce risk of virus transmission and exposure to environmental health hazards and to support student health needs. So we were required by the grant documents themselves in order to conduct this survey. We're required to allow for public input on this, which is what we'll do next. But what I wanted to say is, now that we have these results, the administrative team is meeting next Monday to take the results of this survey, use the results of this survey to guide what we're doing next. However, there are other requirements from the grant. So 20% or $584,000 of this grant has to be earmarked for learning loss. So I took the grant funds themselves, I subtracted out the amount of money that we have already committed to staff for. We had staff members that we paid out of the ESSER 2 grant, additional staff members that are funded for this year out of ESSER 2, and we'll fund them for next year and the year after out of ESSER 3. So subtracting that out, subtracting out the $584,000 for learning loss, the remaining money, which is approximately $1.1 million, will go in these priorities. And again, I'm meeting with the administrative team on Monday, and we'll decide how it gets divvied up.
Sarah?
Yes.
I know it ended last night, so I'm not looking for this sort of depth, but is there can you break it down in the groups between what was, for example, staff's priorities versus family's priorities, that type of thing?
I can do that. I just didn't have time
I understand.
between last night when it closed and today when I'm talking to you.
No, that's fantastic. And one thing I think is important to point out too, is that when we talk about air quality, especially in the buildings, we do test air quality seasonally in each of the seasons to check levels, and we have done that for the past 4 or 5 years.
You have an air purifier in every room.
Yeah. So I think that's important too.
So
That's fantastic.
as Superintendent Lynch said, we did with our Plymouth County money last year purchase air purifiers for every room. well, we're going to need new filters for
Yep.
those. So, and then we want to have the windows open in the classrooms, but in order to have the windows open, we want screens on the windows. And so there are a lot of big things that we have talked about with ESSER 2 and ESSER 3, like the HVAC system at MEC. And so there are big things we've talked about, but then, screens. How many windows are there in a classroom? Do you have the screens there? So this building's great.
Should be. Mr. Chair?
Go ahead.
Thank you very much. The survey's great, and I'm actually interested to see that for the most part, the results mirrored my own answers to the survey. I wondered if you mentioned that the next step is that these categories will go to a team that will start to figure out where specifically what the money's going to go to. And I'm sure I already know the answer to this, but I was just curious if we would have a future ability to hear what the ideas are before it happens. Not necessarily that we want to micromanage, but just to hear specifically where that's going to go.
The grant application is due October 4th. So
After the fact, maybe.
I can give you an after the fact report.
Sure, that would be great. Thank you. And thanks for putting together the grant as well.
You're welcome.
Any other questions? Thank you for Sarah, and thank you to Sean for doing all this and putting it together, Sean, and sending it out from the tech department. We really appreciate that. Sorry, you had a question. Go right ahead.
If you go back to the previous slide, you may not have to, but you combined two categories into one even because they were tied, but really that could be 1, 2, 3.
Mm-hmm.
And, okay, so second and third, those are really the first three choices, which in my opinion, most directly impact the students. And as a comment, the other items about the HVAC and screens and everything, we've lived with the flu, the COVID situation. I personally think we're going to have to live with it. And to me, that's a lot of money you're talking about. You took out $500,000 that you'd already spent for. I'd like to see it more directed towards the children and not the facilities. And it might be just a temporary thing where we're worried about having screens and windows open. So first point would be, I would agree the first one is the most important. Mental health, well, you divided it in second and third. So mental health services and support. So could you break down what was the second and what was the third? Because you combined them in two, but I don't know how they broke down. What was the second and what was the third?
The second and the third were the same.
Well, but how
So-
could they be say second and third? If they were one answer, they would be the same.
There were 13 choices for what's most important, and the people that chose the most important for the district was that first one that you see up there. And then there were 13 choices for second most important and 13 choices for third most important. And the most popular choice for second most important and the most popular choice for third most important were the same.
Okay.
So the way the survey was set up, it wasn't, here are 13 things, pick your first, second, and third.
Okay.
Because that makes analyzing the result, well.
I guess I would tend to wait. You've combined those two because they're second and third, but I tend to weight them more. Then if you go to the next slide, you said the next two. By combining the choices in second and third, you've kind of, to me, I personally feel mental health services and support, again, impacts the students. I think it's really important. I think the first one's really important. And I'm not trying to argue this or figure out what you're doing bureaucratically and spending money, but I think you could spend a lot of money buying screens and filters and everything, where these first three items to me would be the most benefit to the students. And I'm not so sure about those building improvements as being so important, but that's just a personal opinion.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, I just wanted to share a story about that particular point about indoor air quality. When we were taking a tour of the new high school, this school that we're in right now, before it was officially open, I had a chance to speak to, and I'm forgetting the gentleman's name. He was the senior architect.
Scott Wooden?
I believe so. And I just asked him, what is it about this design that you think contributes the most, or why did you choose the things that you chose in the design of this school? And one of the most important points that he mentioned with regards to student learning was comfort, indoor air quality and comfort. And so I think it is important, I think, for students, but I would totally agree with you, sir, that after the past year and a half that we've had, that mental health is probably, there's a reason why I think a lot of people picked that. But I just want to share that story, that I think it does play a major role. And I think especially when summer comes up, we understand that a lot more with the heat.
Go ahead, please.
I don't want to abuse my privilege here, but my kids went through Plymouth Public Schools. They went through the Nathaniel Morton School, which used to be a high school. It's an old building. It's like I call it the brick building next to the old police station.
Yeah.
It's a beautiful old building. Kids have gone through those schools for generations without any trouble. I'm not trying to argue against what the architect said. And I know they get new standards from the state about what they're required to do. It's one reason we build so many new buildings. But I just want to emphasize, if you're saying that our kids can't learn because it gets too hot near the end of the school year, kids have done it for generations. Putting the money in those first three items is much more important than, again, I'm pushing back a little bit on the comfort level. I think the teachers, the environment of the school, the support of the teachers, that's going to override all those other things. The kids, we all get hot and humid towards the summer, and it seems like it's a big ticket item to start talking about all those physical plant improvements. Again, generations of kids have gone through schools with no air conditioning. They used to go out of school in the summer because they were working in the farms. Put the money to the kids. And I don't think they really, they don't always need it. My children went through Plymouth North when they had quote unquote temporary, the old Plymouth North. They still got a good education, even though they were in these temporary buildings, and people said, oh, it's horrible. The teachers, the motivation of the parents, the motivation of the kids, that's what mattered. Not the building. So I think I made my point. Put the money towards the kids.
So just to be clear, I took all the results for what people voted for the first, second, and third, combined them all together, and the first choice was still the first choice, and the second choice was still the second choice. So all I was presenting is, if you combined them all, that would be the...
I'm not doing gotcha or quibbling with the way you did it. I'm just, when I hear about buying screens and filters, the marginal benefit of those are hard to quantify. And I know, like I said, kids for generations. I love that old school building. I don't know it has air conditioning or not, but kids for generations went to those buildings. And I think you get my point.
I do.
It's a big capital item, and if you put it into those other things, I think you're not putting it where it would do the most good.
Understood.
Thank you. Any other questions? Seeing none, thank you, Sarah. I appreciate it, and we look forward to hearing how the report turns out for the 4th. Excellent. So I'll move on to a couple of items that I have. The first one that came up that I want to ask the committee about is location of subcommittees, and Rich and I had a conversation. It started with the policy subcommittee wanting to do remote. So there's really two parts to this question. I didn't feel, since we're meeting in person, that the committee had given authority for any subcommittees to do remote meetings. The second would be, if it's this committee's will to do that, I have to ask a couple of questions and see if that's still able to be done in certain ways. But I was opening it up to the committee to hear what their point of view was. And I think I can make that decision on my own. That's all. Thoughts? It ultimately became, they met in person, so.
I guess I would have to ask, are they typically attended or have they been attended by anyone in the public? And would they have that access to it if it were online?
So that's the second question I have to research. And so if the committee has some interest in that, then I would have to look at that second.
So I would say, yes, I would be fine with it if it was agreed upon by the committee, as long as there was public access.
Okay.
Mr. Chair, I'd agree with that as well.
Okay. Greg, do you have a thought?
No, I mean, if they're public meetings, they should be able to be attended. So,
Not that as much as the idea of remote versus in person.
I think either way is fine.
Okay. I think part of the problem becomes, if you think about it, it's our meeting that happens once in a while that we have to do. We have people here to transmit it on YouTube and stuff like that. I don't know that we'll have people available to do that piece for us. So I'll have to check that, but that would be my feeling. So I will check that part and get back.
Sure. And Mr. Chair, if it ends up being a burden to our existing resources, I think I'd be totally fine just doing it in person. And to be clear, the only reason it came up was we were trying to put a meeting in as soon as possible, and one of our members couldn't be there, but could join remotely, and so we tried to do that. But I get what you're saying. So I'd be fine with whatever the district can handle.
Let me have a conversation and go on from there, but thank you. I just wanted some direction from the committee.
Yep.
The other piece that I put down was just for, we're still going to have the school committee workshop. We had talked about that before. I'll be sending out dates available that might be work for people. I want to tell everybody, as we did the last meeting, we changed our dates. So our next meeting is the 7th, followed by the 21st. But we're not going to do the 1st and 3rd of November because the 1st, the superintendent and I are away at the convention. But what we'd like to do is just do the 18th. The other problem becomes I can't move to the 2nd or 4th for a second meeting because that's both Veterans Day and Thanksgiving.
Right.
And I figured none of you would want to be here.
Yeah.
So we'll just do the 18th in November.
Okay.
I also sent a letter, a copy of the letter that the Secretary's Union has requested to begin the professional bargaining, and we'll be dealing with that. MSBA, Brian, did you have anything you wanted to add about MSBA?
Continued. There was no OAC meeting this week,
Right.
so I don't have any updates beyond what I provided at last meeting.
Just want to remind everybody that the MASS convention is 3rd through 6th. You're all still invited to attend. Chair will entertain a motion to accept the consent agenda, which is warrants and fundraisers.
Yeah, so moved.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Discussion. Hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It's unanimous. We do have an out-of-state field trip that by our rules we have to vote on. That's a field trip to the Rhode Island Museum of Natural History. Do I hear a motion to accept?
So moved.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Discussion. This is a normal, usual field trip for us.
Just because of the environment we're in with the different COVID guidelines in each state, could we look at guidelines for Rhode Island before we commit to traveling out of state? That's,
What was that?
She wants us to look at the Rhode Island guidelines with regard to masking and indoor buildings and things like that. So if we do decide to go to Rhode Island for a trip, then we make sure that we're in line with what Rhode Island's doing.
if I may share what that's based on, is states like New York have 100% vaccination mandatory and would have to adhere to the state. So I just hope we can consider collaboration with nursing for any out-of-state field trips.
Okay. We have to vote on every out-of-state field trip, so we can bring it up. That'll be fine. So the chair would allow amendment to make sure that they were following Rhode Island guidelines.
So moved.
Do I hear a second for the amendment?
Second.
Discussion on the amendment alone. Greg?
So will we be following, we're always following the Massachusetts guidelines, but if Rhode Island had something more strict, we would have to follow those as well.
Correct.
So we're never going to go below the Massachusetts.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. The goal would be to not exclude anyone that meets our guidelines and doesn't meet the state we're traveling to guidelines. And if I may, there's also the consideration that if anyone were to get sick on any overnight or out-of-state trips, it would create a very different scenario than in past years, because we'd have to figure out how we'd get someone that needs to be quarantined to be safely kept separate or home on a different timeline than the trip. So just things to consider, please, as we navigate these different waters. Thank you.
No, I think that's reasonable. And yeah, so I mean, I think we can also recommend that administrators check in with Paula to make sure that everything works. It makes sense.
Sure.
Yep.
Richard, do you have a question? Go ahead, Greg.
Maybe it's to the nurse. Is there any current travel bans that would affect this? Like, is Massachusetts not recommending Rhode Island or?
Not that I'm aware of. It was just something that came up at the Mass DPH School Health Unit meeting I was at today, reminding us as nurse leaders and nurse managers to just ask for some forethought on things that we did without really thinking about before. Just the environment overall has changed.
Okay, thank you.
Did you have another question?
Nope. I'm all
Okay.
set. Thank you.
So on the amendment, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It's unanimous. Back to the original motion with the amendment. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It's unanimous again. So thank you. Just a list of others where there's a field trip, and I do want to thank Northeastern Savings Bank for their donation. We asked them to come, but their manager had a meeting tonight and couldn't attend. So they gave a nice donation to us, and I just wanted to bring that up. With that, does anybody have any questions or comments? So when we, okay.
Sorry, Mr. Chair. Just with regards to the conversation we just had, but specifically about this high school Freedom Trail trip, I guess it's probably the way it already is, but I just wanted to make sure that anytime we're doing a field trip, given the kind of stakes these days, that we do have field trip leaders obviously check in with Mrs. Magnasco about protocols for moving kids around.
Yep.
I'm sure that's the way it already happens. I just wanted to make sure.
So we started this meeting with an executive session. We are adjourning to the executive session. We will not be reconvening other than to end the meeting. So with that, everyone, thank you very much. Our next meeting is October 7th. Thank you.